Good evening. My name is Thurman Greco, and the name of this show is Let's Live with Thurman Greco, and we are coming to you live from Woodstock, New York, and also on YouTube, Let's Live with Thurman Greco. And we got us a really special guest this afternoon. We've got Lily, and I am just delighted that we do have her. So I'm going to start off by saying, Lily, will you tell people who you are and why you're here?
So my name is Lily Korolkoff. I'm running for town board as a Democrat. And yeah, I own Station Bar and Curio in Woodstock, and I have a 10-year-old son who goes to Woodstock Elementary, and it's an honor to be here.
Yes, have you, what motivated you to get into the Woodstock Town Board?
Well, we've been here 10 years full time. I kind of grew up coming up, enjoying Woodstock as, a kid. So like starting in the 80s, basically. And I feel like in the last 10 years, there's been a lot of things that have needed to happen and they don't necessarily happen, or there doesn't seem to be like any importance put on them. So I was really scared, and I know there's a lot of people that are really scared to run for public office because the political climate is often not nice and kind, and I think it's important for people to get involved and make the change that they want to see.
So have you been going to the board meetings?
I have. I've often gone to board meetings. Sometimes I do not, because it's not a very friendly place to bring a 10-year-old sometimes.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think the kind of sometimes the language and the rhetoric and the infighting make it really impossible to get things done, or to make it seem like a place where people do want to get involved. So that's another big reason that I was running.
So how many people are you running against?
For town board, there are 3 of us. Serena DeConestio just left the race, but she was also going to be one of the Democratic primary candidates. It's myself, Lori Osmond. We both got endorsements from the Woodstock Democratic Committee, and Marcel Nagel, who is also great. And then there's 3 candidates for supervisors. So there's 2 seats for town board and 3 candidates at this point.
And now you said that you have the bar and curio.
Mm-hmm.
What motivated you?
Well, so when in 2015 we had our son, and we were coming up every weekend. My dad retired in Fleischmann, so we were coming up to visit him. It would be like leaving work on Friday nights, driving up, bringing him, coming to Woodstock, because it's where you would go. It's always, you want the flea market, you want to get a good bite to eat, you want culture and all those things. So we were coming up here all the time, and there was one afternoon where we were like, we've got like a 4-month-old, and just trying to like go and have like a good beer and like maybe play a game of pool, and it didn't really seem like there are any places where it felt appropriate to do that. And so we had this whole conversation about what a community bar, someplace that was comfortable for, new parents and, multi-generations to go to. And we had this whole, goofy conversation about it, and we drove home to Fleischmann's and passed the for rent sign on the building. And I was like, well, I wonder. And it turned out to be like the same amount of rent that we were spending in the city. So we kind of just pulled the trigger and decided that we'd figure it out along the way. So that was what we did.
And that was in 2015?
And that was in 2015. It took us about a year to open. So
really?
Yeah. So, but we did a lot of the work ourselves, and we'd never gone through, getting business loans and, dealing with the state liquor authority and all that stuff. So it was a total learning curve. But it was like a real passion project, and we really believed in it. And the community was really excited, and the intention of making a spot for the community was actually like welcomed, which was crazy.
Well, one of the things that I have observed, and you can tell me whether it worked that way for you. My observation is that when people come into Woodstock, or whether they're here already and they decide to do a business, people are very open about helping you.
Yeah, there was definitely a lot of community input, and the space and the business itself kind of runs on the idea of like having it be open to that kind of input. And so we were having people bring us art and antiques and things that related to the Ulster and Delaware train lines, and like musicians coming and wanting to play that hadn't played anywhere in a long time. There was very nice to feel so welcomed into the community, because I know a lot of times there is sometimes like an outsider, like people are afraid that people are going to come in and try to change the town or change like the fabric of it. And that wasn't what we wanted to do. We wanted to be really a place that appreciated that and magnified that community input.
Well, you guys were familiar faces in the community, I think, by the time you opened your business.
Yeah.
It's not as if you showed up on Monday and all of a sudden you had a business. And that does happen.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think recognizing like what the community was about, essentially, and having that kind of deep-seated appreciation for it was really elemental. You know, and the building that's in too was kind of like representative of that, because the building is super old. It's got like no right angles in it because it's been moved 3 times or 4 times or something. And there was so much character in the imperfections of it that it was something that we really wanted to embrace and not just whitewash over. So yeah, I think people understood that, and they were really, and that building was always like near and dear to people's hearts too. They're like, why isn't something cool in there? And
you know, that's very true. My daughter is writing a book about Woodstock, and I believe that building's in it.
yeah,
Because of the story behind it.
yeah,
It's got a darling story.
It's got a great story, and the man behind it, Victor Basil, when he brought it to town, I mean, he was a character too. And like, I've never, got to meet him, but I do know his kids pretty well. It's my landlords, and I mean, like bon vivant, believing anything is possible, picked it up and kind of adopted it. And the photos of it being moved into town are outrageous. It's like people tell me stories about it still. Like, I remember being a little kid and watching it, come up Tinker Street, and them having me lift the power lines over the the roof of it and stuff like that. So it's one of those things that's really iconic. And I mean, the question that we get most asked is, where are the train tracks? And then you tell the tourist, hey, there was never a train line here. This has been relocated. So it's like, I don't know. It really is a sweet building. It's got great soul to it, and you can feel it when you go in. So yeah, I love it.
And how long have you had it?
So we will be open 9 years in June.
That's long enough.
That's a long time. It's flown by.
Yes.
Really been
and
a long
so
time.
that gives you a really good foundation for being on the Woodstock Democratic Committee.
Yeah. There's been a lot of things that have changed. Not only in like, obviously like losing some staples of the community that were really figureheads for like what Woodstock stood for, but in terms of seeing policy changes and demographic changes and all those things, and having it happen so fast, and kind of looking around and being like, wow, like, we're one of the oldest bar in Woodstock at this point. And all the places that we knew that we started going to when we came up here,
they're gone.
Yeah. So it's, you kind of have a bit of a defensiveness in terms of like trying to preserve yourself in this very different world that you're living in. And sometimes you look around and go, is this still applicable? Like, is this train of thought that we had still valued? And then, people come and experience it for the first time and are blown away still. So it's...
Well, now, is not... Because I was on, many, many years ago, I was on the Woodstock Democratic Committee. I ran on one election. My daughter in California came down with breast cancer right when we were trying to get votes.
Mm-hmm.
And I took off, and I didn't come back for the whole 6 weeks until after the election. I won by 2 votes. I wasn't even here. But people on the board, they kept my name alive. The meetings then, are they open now?
For the Democratic Committee?
Yeah.
They're fairly open. I think that they could be probably like a little bit more publicized. Some of them are a little bit more closed, but in terms of my experience with those committee meetings, I don't really have a ton until I announced and went before them and announced my candidacy. I'd never really understood the total breadth and depth of it, but yeah, it seems like they're very open. Amy Fraden's amazing.
When I first moved here, because I've had a lot of experience integrating myself in a community, the first thing I did was I decided that I wanted to attend those meetings. And of course, at that time, there was nobody going to.
Yeah.
And I was seated. I mean, I was the audience for this whole committee. I was the audience. And there was one other person, and the two of us sat there and saw the meetings, and
Yeah.
he was homeless. So he and I were there with the both of the meetings, and it was a real education.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say that I have more experience going to like town board meetings and like, I mean, really the first meetings that, you know, we got to go to were town board meetings, planning board meetings, things of that nature. And I think at the time there was kind of an essence of not being worried about going to the Democratic Committee meetings because it seemed like such a like strong, like they got this kind of thing. And now I think more than ever, I think, you know, people really have to be more aware of what's going on. And sometimes, despite best efforts, I think that sometimes information doesn't get disseminated as, you know, as accurately or as widely as it needs to. So people having involvement in day-to-day stuff like that is really, really important because
It is extremely important, and I can remember attending a town board meeting or some kind of a meeting, because I went to all the meetings, I went everywhere because I was trying to get into the community.
Yeah.
And there was a woman there who introduced herself to me, and I forget her name, but she said to me, she said, "I am the corporate memory. I attend every meeting."
yeah.
And of course, I don't know if we have that person now.
Yeah. You know, there's a couple candidates, I won't call them out by name because they might not like that, but there's still some really, really active people that, you know, actually drive themselves almost to the point of insanity by going to every single zoning meeting, every single planning board meeting, every single open meeting.
It's
that
a
they
way of
possibly can.
life.
Yeah.
It is a way of life.
It is. And it's, I think, you know, it's a complicated, I think the world that we live in general is more complicated than before, but in terms of what's been going on with development and all these things that our town faces, you know, there's really good people that are concerned, and again, I think their voices don't really get heard, and they're probably the most well-informed people in town in a lot of ways, but, you know, that sometimes they're quirky, and sometimes they're a little bit off the map in terms of like what's normal now, and so their takes from all these meetings sometimes don't get respected the way that they should, and they are treated like they're being rabid about, you know, following, whether it's like, you know, corruption things or whatever. They're a little bit pushed to the sidelines these days, and that's not, I don't think that that's a productive way of
Well,
operating.
you know, on the one hand, there's no issue too small
Right.
to be discussed
Yeah.
in Woodstock. You can't get too small for that. But on the other hand, for a person to just completely dip themselves into this small community
Mhm.
is like going on to another planet.
Yeah.
And then there's this third thing which makes, I think, life confusing or challenging in Woodstock, and that is that when you have a population the size of ours,
Mhm.
and we've only got a certain number of people because we've only got a certain number of houses,
Right.
that is an ideal population for somebody who wants to come in
Mhm.
and take over.
Yeah.
So there's this, you know, that
Yeah.
factor,
Yeah, for sure.
you know.
I think it's a big struggle. I mean, in talking about, you know, demographic changes and the way it's changed, I mean, just in the last 10 years, and I can recognize a bigger change over the course of, you know, maybe 30 years, but I think it's really accelerated in the last 10 years. And there's, you know, people will talk about not wanting to see restaurants owned by the same people, and like we really get into these like kind of like tribalistic ideas where it's like, oh, well, if you're not from here, or you own too much, or this and that and the other thing. And it's really like, I think you should be looking at intentions and the way that those intentions are realized. And we can't, I mean, the population is changing so quickly, and it's, you know, the median age is what, 63 or something? So there's going to be another big demographic shift coming up really soon. And I think that if people don't realistically look at what that looks like and plan for it, instead of complaining on Facebook or or demonizing people that do want to do good things for the town. You know, you can't shape how people are going to shape the town without listening. And I think, you know, hearing what they have to say, and then also being able to share your opinion and having a crystalline vision of what you want Woodstock to be.
Well, you know that you said the median age is 63.
I think it's 63.
Woodstock, as far as if I could be wrong now, I could be out of date. It has the oldest population of any town in Ulster County.
I can believe that.
We are the oldest one.
Yeah.
So we've continually been on the cusp of all of us are going to die in the next 5 years. I mean, we're right there.
That's a terrible thought.
It's not. I mean, it's the reality.
Yeah.
And that presents other problems. Because for one thing, when everybody is 65 or so, it's you have a community of people who do not work.
Right.
And if they do work, they're not making any money.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
Which, if it's dominant, that controls the economy of the community.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And we do have people who come to Woodstock, and I don't even know anymore whether they hang around or not. There are no jobs for them.
It's a huge problem. I think it's, you know, I'm 40. Everyone on our staff lives out of town for the most part. We have one person, and they're all in their 20s and 30s. There's no, I mean, between the not being able to find affordable housing, you don't really have, as a business owner, I don't think you really have a year-round contingency anymore because there's so many short-term renters and all that stuff that when winter comes and you don't have, you know, great skiing right nearby and you don't have activities that you can do as often, you kind of, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like you become a seasonal town where people are coming up just for the weekend or something. And so, you know, that's why we still see businesses that aren't open Tuesday through Friday or Tuesday through Thursday or Monday through Thursday, because to pay somebody to be there and not make any money is, you know, devastating. And you don't want to operate in the red all winter long just to get into the black and then do it again in the next winter. But yeah, I mean, lack of opportunities. I think the only opportunities really in town at this point are service industry and, like, you know, service counter stuff or like cashier jobs. And that's not, I don't think that's fair. You know, I think that that's really small thinking.
Well, but it's the kind of community that we foster.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it is the kind of community that our age fosters.
Right.
And it also, you don't have that many jobs. People are traveling, you know, 30, 35 miles to the job, which is kind of a hike. I can remember, now we don't do that now because we now have the Dunkin' Donuts out here at 375. Before the Dunkin' Donuts moved out to 375, if you were in Boyceville or out in that neighborhood and you wanted a Dunkin' Donuts, you drove to Kingston and thought nothing about it. So we do have that kind of an attitude, and we also have a lot of people who are working under the table. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, there's definitely a silent minority. I don't even know if it's a minority, but there are a lot of just cash paying jobs where it's like, you know, hourly labor, you know, coming. It's, and I mean, that's kind of, I think it's a national problem in a lot of ways too, but in terms of being able to afford payroll taxes and afford payroll for someone who's only coming in maybe a few hours a week, it is easier to pay them cash and just be like, hey, you know, oh, this is what you can do, this is fine. Like, why would I try to, like, it just doesn't seem fair in this economy to do that to people. And, you know, it's breaking businesses. Like, it really is. I mean, making payroll is, even in the summer, one of the most impossible things to do.
And when you pay a person cash, you deprive them of paying their taxes. So when they too become 60 or of 70, whatever that age is, if we still exist as a country, they have not paid into Social Security.
Right. If that's even going to exist anymore either, you know.
Right. So we don't know about the future.
Right.
We really don't know.
No, it's a little scary.
So what do you think are some challenges? Now that we have discussed these things, what are some challenges that you're going to be facing? Do you think?
I think there's always going to be a challenge in finding workers and finding staff. I think there's going to be challenges in terms of, if we simply rely on tourism and wealthy tourists to support our town, and things go south, we're not going to have maybe that kind of depth of industry that we have right now. And I think it's really hard to build an entire economy of a town just based on how many people are coming up 28 on a weekend basis.
That's true.
So I think that's like kind of the top priority. But I think as a town, I think I think there's a lot of issues that we're facing that are kind of being argued about and polarized in ways that don't really make sense to me sometimes. And I think that looking at the science that we know about, forever chemicals and, best practices for lawn care, and how everyone wanted a green lawn forever. And, now it's like faux pas, you should have wildflowers. But we have to kind of like figure out as a town what our stance is, right? Like, do we want to be a green community? Do we want to be socially proactive and make sure that we have, zoning that promotes, building small houses and one of the big things for me, and like one of the reasons that I moved up here, is to be closer to my dad, who's now 80. And I think there's probably a lot of kids my age, not that I'm a kid anymore, but kids that would want to come up and support their elderly parents.
But they have no place.
But there's no place to go, unless you're moving into a house with them, which a lot of times is just not feasible for a family to move in with an elderly. But to be a neighbor to that elderly parent is a possibility. But when you don't allow for opportunities like that, I think you sell everyone really short. And plus, the elders of this community have such a wealth of knowledge and memories, and that's the spirit of Woodstock. That's like the essence of it. And so when you don't kind of like pass down that ethos to the next generation, then you really run the risk of losing it entirely. And I think that should be a big conversation, beyond not having enough enrollment in the schools and all that stuff. But you're really like not doing a service to the people that built this town the way that we know it.
Well, if you on the board, on the Woodstock Democratic Committee, how do you see the Woodstock Democratic Committee folding into that story, if at all?
Well, I think, and I can't really speak for the committee itself. I think that a lot of committee members and a lot of Democrats feel the same way in terms of being afraid of losing the soul of Woodstock. I think the means and methods about preserving it are kind of differ in some ways. But what is nice about this race, I will say, is that I think everyone running for both supervisor and for the town board has really big ideas about ways to improve things for everybody. I think, again, it's just a matter of differing methods of getting there. But the surge of positivity that I've experienced in talking to all the candidates is really pretty remarkable, and it actually gives me hope. And there's a lot of people that, between customers I meet at the bar, or people that I meet at the food pantry or whatever, I think a lot of people just need that hope at this point, because it seemed pretty hopeless. Like when you have issues that just fester and kind of seemingly just get worse and worse and worse with very, very small steps forward, it's disheartening. It's really disheartening. And I think that, it's so complex. It's such a complex town, right? And there's no easy answers for anything, but I think having a positive outlook and believing that the town of Woodstock can be a model for the rest of the world in a lot of ways, and be a force of change that people can replicate. There's a lot of things we haven't done, but the go-to should never be like, oh, we've never done that, so we're not going to do that, right? Like, we've never done that, but we should do that. It would be like, it's Woodstock, man. Like, everyone should.
Well, I agree with you totally. If you haven't done it, let's try it.
Right.
You know, but there are communities in this area. There's one over in Massachusetts that is actually a walking living museum. They don't think of themselves as a walking living museum, but they did their zoning back in the 1800s and they're still there.
Wow.
And we're not there. We're going to move, you know?
Yeah.
So the fact that we're not there and we have not locked ourselves in
Yeah.
brings all of this stuff up.
Yeah.
And the fact that people in Woodstock love to talk and yell and carry on.
Yeah, it's a very debate heavy town for sure. People love talking about it.
And I remember the first question and answer that I went to, I was, I don't know if I was on the Woodstock Democratic, on the board yet, but I was very close. Because I had been going to all the meetings and everything, and they had a question and answer session, and somebody said, now listen, just sit quietly, don't say anything, you go over there and sit in that chair and don't say anything.
Yeah.
And I thought, now wait a minute, what kind of a story is that? And 3 minutes into that session, I knew I was unprepared.
Yeah.
I just didn't know. I
Yeah.
mean, there was just too much. But it's an open-ended situation.
Right.
And because we're open-ended, all bets are off.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
I really believe that.
yeah, I believe that too. I think it's also interesting too, because I think one of the byproducts of having a community that doesn't feel like their needs are being addressed or that they're being heard is that they tend to stop being able to listen to each other. And so...
Oh, I mean, I don't think anybody's listened to Woodstock for the last 15
All right, good,
years.
it's not just me. Yeah, it's hard. I think people, there's a lot of people that at the core, and we see it all the time in the bar where there's very different, it might be someone that's lived here for 30 years meeting somebody that's just moved up or whatever, and
Do they meet?
They meet, and generally what happens is that there's, when you're in that kind of like social environment, there is kind of more fluid transfer of stories and, and points and issues, and I think there's room for understanding. I think it's about the vessel that you're putting people in terms of like, how do you communicate? How do you communicate? And then when you're surrounded by, the media that we're surrounded with all the time and the kind of vitriol that you're, forced to watch on any news station at any national, level, people get normalized to unhealthy forms of debate. And, the bottom line is that you can disagree with people. Just because someone disagrees with you doesn't make them a bad person. And like that point has seemed to go out the window. And it just astonishes me.
Not in Woodstock. Not in Woodstock.
But it's a thing, it really is. And I think it's important to remember that.
Oh, that's hilarious. Well, that's part of it. The yelling and the screaming.
Yeah.
And the letters.
Yeah. I mean, I understand when people want to communicate, but again, I think I think if people were heard and they felt like there was a more open conversation going on between them and their government and their elected officials, I think a lot of that would kind of dissipate, right? Like it's, you have to start screaming if your voice isn't being heard over the din.
Well, I think we talk about all these different things, and there's this open-ended, and there's a lot of talk about all of these 99 households here and a heliport and all this. And it's like, where's the reality?
Right. Where are the things that people actually want and need?
Right.
Yeah. It's a really good question. I don't know. I don't know what happened to those things being held as important as, pickleball courts. I think that the basic rights of this town and pretty much of any society are really built around, the being able to pursue happiness, to have clean water, to have housing, to have opportunities, and I don't really see that happening here. It just doesn't seem to be prioritized. It seems to be, we need to have short-term rentals so that we can have a strong tourism industry, and we need to have this, that, and the other thing. It's like my kid goes to Woodstock Elementary, and I'm watching. I've gone through, as somebody who rents a house, I have seen the process where, you know, right before COVID, looking at a house that was like $130,000, being in the middle of a look at it, and having the guy go, well, I just got a $250,000 cash offer, so if you can't beat it, get out of the way.
Yeah.
And that's a norm. That's like absolutely the normal thing up here. And I think it's really, you know, I understand that realtors need to make their money too. I totally get it. And I think now, there's, in talking about the population aging and the potential for there to be another big shift in terms of leaving house, you know, wanting to move south, being sick of Woodstock winters. Like, there is going to be a big push out, and it would be nice to see some emphasis put on getting families back up here. Because I think families are really what tether the community to reality.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
I totally agree.
It's so important.
You know, if you don't have children, you don't have a community.
Right.
You may have a town,
Right.
you may pay taxes, all those things, but you don't have a community.
Yeah, and when you don't know your neighbors, I mean, we are lucky enough to still live in town and rent a house in town. But there, you know, do I necessarily feel as comfortable letting my kid walk up and down the street when I know that there is going to be a different family or different renter in the house every week, every weekend up the road from me? No, I don't feel great about that. The idea of having strong neighborhoods where you know that your neighbors are looking out for you and your kids and each other, like that aspect is so diminished right now, and I think that a lot of people are feeling it, and that's
a new change.
Yeah.
When I first moved here, this town was free.
Yeah.
I mean, kids were loose anywhere, and there was a certain sort of an informal group of people that kind of watched the people.
Right.
And I work in the flea market. I read tarot in the flea market now, and so on the days when the flea market is open, I'm sitting there in this booth all day long, and I do watch the kids.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And that's kind of old Woodstock.
Yeah.
New Woodstock, you don't turn them loose because somebody's going to run over them.
Right.
Not that anybody's going to accost them, they're just going to run over them.
Yeah, I mean, traffic safety, that's a whole other thing too. But yeah, I mean, there's a level of, like I have friends in Orchard Lane, and then my son often hangs out at their house, and sometimes I'll see him like walking up with his friend across the street and doing like, 10-year-old thing where he's like, oh, it's my mom, and it warms my heart because I know on that stretch, more so than in the neighborhood I live in, that everyone knows who he is and who he's allowed to be around and what's safe for him.
Now that is the Woodstock that I moved into.
Yeah, and it's really reminiscent. I mean, that's the Woodstock that I wanted to move. I remember seeing that as a kid and being like, wow, look at all these kids on the green. Look at the freedoms that they have. Like, I grew up in the city. There were certain freedoms I did have, but there was always an element of watch your back, right?
Yeah.
And to have a community that's watching your back for you and watching your kids back and has that, it takes a village mentality is one of the reasons that I was like, this is where I want to raise my child. And seeing the change and seeing that kind of become, an old school idea, it's awful in a lot of ways. It's really unfair.
We got to get it back.
Yeah.
I hope we get it back. I
Me
mean,
too.
I don't have children now. My grandchildren are grown, so I'm looking at great-grandchildren, and they're not in the area. But I still, that feel,
Yeah.
And not knowing your neighbor, I know that I had a neighbor who moved away because she didn't have any real neighbors.
Yeah.
And so she went over to Dutchess County, because she said there's no neighbors anymore.
Yeah.
And over on Streamside Terrace, there's 4 empty houses. That's only 1 block long.
Yeah. Yeah, when we were doing petitioning, I walked in that block and I was talking to one of the ladies there that had been there, for like 40 years. And she went into a litany of events. So-and-so bought this house and now it's a short-term rental. And the one thing that she was really, really excited about is that one of those buildings, one of those houses that got bought intending to be a short-term renter, or rental rather, ended up being rented long-term to a family with kids in it.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, and she was like, look, there's bikes in the yard, and like, and I think that's, indicative of what people do want to see. Like, when you talk about the value of a town, and like, if there was a way to incentivize that kind of thinking and that kind of, I don't have anything against people that want to rent out their houses. I totally understand that. But I think when you do it from an outsider perspective and you don't understand that the community, like, needs, you don't look at the community needs, you're looking at your financial needs or your corporation's needs or whatever. Like, there should be some tighter restrictions on that stuff, and there should be more opportunities for families.
I think also there's thinking of your own financial needs, but you've got to take off the rose-colored lenses.
Right. Yeah.
There are a lot of empty houses in Woodstock.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's the idea that they can only be one thing or empty, and it's like, and that speaks to the same kind of ideal of, like, business owners rather taking a loss and keeping their storefront empty as opposed to renting it for less than they want to get for it, right? It's the idea that, and most people, and that's the difference, right? Like, individuals don't think that way. That's a very corporate way of thinking. But, there's so many houses that I drive by as somebody that really has been priced out of the market in terms of possibilities for buying anything. But you look at them just like, God, what a cute little house. Like, you have all the feels about what it would be like to live there, and wonder why, it's sitting there derelict, or why it's sitting there, and, you see maybe one car there every 6 months. And, it's really, it's not necessarily, I don't think that building a bunch of houses, and creating like a very dense, a more dense kind of like suburban-esque area, I don't think that that's the answer. I think that we're underutilizing the housing inventory that we have in a lot of ways, and that the town could be doing more to facilitate and encourage people saying, hey, you know what, I'm not really using this house that much anymore, but if I could get like a tax break for renting it to a family long term, yeah, I would do that in a second. That way I know someone's living in it. And I think that kind of stuff would actually have it's a pretty simple idea, but like sometimes simple ideas have the biggest impact.
Well, I think all bets are off now. Really, I mean, the community is open. Whatever the ending is going to be, we don't know.
Right.
There are other communities where the ending of the story.
Right.
The only thing that I'm not sure that this, and I've deliberately stepped back. I've been doing other things the last 5 or 10 years, but we have the sewer system, we have an electrical system. We don't have the infrastructure for this gorgeous condo and for that. So we just don't have it.
No, you don't.
We are at the limits.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, especially within the town, like the center of town and stuff like that. I mean, the one of the things I think I'm most passionate about is the work that the Complete Streets Committee has been doing in terms of like safety. And it's not really about expanding roadways or anything, but making them safer for people and making it more pedestrian friendly, safer for kids, safer for the elderly, creating sidewalks that are like cohesive and stuff. But you're not going to be able to build wider roads, right? Like you can't make a 4-lane highway between here and Bearsville. You can't. The roads are always going to be windy mountain roads, and that's part of the charm of the community, right? But in terms of how safe we make those roads and the thoughtfulness in terms of like, you don't have the same kind of cars as you did 40 years ago coming up and down these streets. You don't have public transportation, so you've got more cars coming up to support, this growing tourism industry and all that stuff. And I think that, realizing that we do have a finite amount of resources, both in terms of water, electricity, power, grid, all those things, is important to think about when we're talking about doing big developments, whether they be luxury developments or affordable housing developments. It has to be like the top thing in terms of how viable is this option? Because at the water problems that we're having right now. It's a big aquifer, and we don't want to like risk worse that's happened by allowing people to say, okay, you want to build 3 houses on this 3-acre parcel, go for it. Well, how is that supported? Because whether or not it's coming off town water and town sewer, that aquifer system is still the ultimate system underneath it all. So yeah, it's not black and white. None of these issues are black and white. And that's one of the things that I think gets lost in translation and conversation sometimes. I think we all want what's best for Woodstock. I think it just depends on how you cut that and how you shape that a little.
Well, and people you have an understanding of a community when you move there.
Right.
There's a little honeymoon
Or you should.
period.
You should.
And then 5 years in, you have another feeling.
Yeah.
And 10 years in, you have another feeling.
Right. Yeah.
And, and people who have been here for, 40 or 50 years, do they come to the meetings?
I don't think they really do as much anymore. I think a lot of people are a little discouraged, a little turned off by some of the meetings, and they feel, again, I think it's like one of those things where people become complacent when they feel like they don't have the power to change anything, or that their input doesn't matter. Then they kind of go, well, it's whatever's going to happen is going to happen.
So what you're saying is that there are possibly some people that come to the meetings who feel like their vote doesn't count. Their opinion doesn't count.
Yeah. Well,
boy, that's a whole new ball of wax for me. I'm used to people in Woodstock believing like mine counts.
Yeah.
First, second, third.
Yeah.
And forget yours.
Yeah, I think.
Which is, that's Woodstock.
Yeah, no, I mean that's the Woodstock I like to see. That's the Woodstock that excites me, and I think that the race right now in terms of getting people involved and having people think that people might actually be willing to listen to each other instead of just kind of inter-argue about stuff and debate about stuff. I think that is a really, really powerful motivator for people to get more involved and to believe that they can have a say. But I think that, it's difficult. I mean, it's really sad when a town like Woodstock kind of mimics and mirrors some of the dialogue that happens on a national scale. And I think that we have to kind of remember that we are a very small community, that there isn't a town exactly like us anywhere. I mean, it's like in terms of like talking about the noise ordinance, there's been so much back and forth on it for 7 years. And
there was
it's been
going way back before then.
It's been going on forever, and it's there's got to be a reality where you go, okay, well, what is the general ethos of the town? What are like our core beliefs? And let's create something. Let's not copy and paste other laws from other towns. Let's actually create something that reflects Woodstock and Woodstock's values. And I think that kind of
is anybody trying that one yet?
Well, I know that a lot of people have been working on it. I mean, they had a task force over the last couple of years, and then I know the Chamber of Commerce and Arts is working with the town too. And there's a lot of varying understandings. But it's one of those things where people, the biggest thing that I hear is like, oh, these out-of-towners move up here and they want to change it. It's not necessarily the out-of-towners. Sometimes it's people that have been there for 40 years. Sometimes it's someone that has a kid that wants to go to sleep. And then on the flip side too, it's this assumption that musicians or venues that are having, music, whether it be inside or outside, are, people that are trying to disturb the peace, or people that don't care about their neighbors. And when you have that kind of unilateral thinking, or like that kind of that imposed perception of the other person that you're trying to deal with, you can't really come to an understanding. And that's where we're kind of, I think, hitting a roadblock with a lot of things. It's demonizing people because they think differently. Again, it makes it very, very hard to come to hey, this seems like a mutually beneficial agreement. People don't know how to collaborate that way anymore. And I think, there's a lot of issues that really need that kind of mutual collaboration and understanding that it is a give and take, that you're not always going to get everything you want out of any piece of legislation. There's always going to be, a little, well, you may not like this, but you love this, and you're not going to like this, but this will work, and that has to be the conversation in terms of like how we shape our laws, I think.
Well, if there's anything we can say about it, it will not be boring.
It will never be boring. I don't think Woodstock could ever be boring.
Not for 1 minute.
Yeah.
Ever.
No, and there's no place, and that's, you know, the one thing about Woodstock I think that's always rung really true, and now having lived here for so long, is that once you live in a place like this, it is very, very hard to find a place like it that you can live in also. It's not...
Really?
Yeah, I mean, the idea of, as someone who's like potentially, you know, has the potential of being displaced because of housing issues, because of renting issues, because of, you know, business, like if my business closes, I might have to leave. If my rental becomes a short-term rental or someone decides to sell it, I might have to leave. And the thinking of where would I possibly go that could have the same heart and soul as Woodstock does, and the focus on the arts and like all these aspects that I've just idolized my entire life. I don't think I've looked. You can't find a place like it, you know? You really can't. The people are amazing. The town is amazing. And it's worth fighting for.
Well, and then of course, in this market, it isn't a matter so much of finding another town that is engaging as Woodstock. It's just simply finding another roof over a house.
Yeah,
you know,
that's what happens. Yeah.
No matter what.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm lucky because, you know, I do have a family house in Fleischmann's or outside of Fleischmann's that, you know, that's my generational wealth, right? Like that's always going to be an option. But in terms of possibilities for my kid, in terms of opportunities in school and all those things, like families really have a much harder time. It's one thing if you're single, it's one thing if you're young and working, but once you have a family and have to put all those pieces together in terms of what is a right fit, it becomes harder and harder to find a place that actually works, where you can afford it, but you also have, you know, job opportunities and other kids in your neighborhood and a good school system and X, Y, and Z, and or, you know, healthcare nearby and all that stuff. And they're really, you know, I mean, that's the struggle. That's the struggle I think a lot of families face right now. So it's, again, kind of disheartening sometimes, but fight for it.
Well, you know, the Hudson Valley offers some things, and it is my feeling that there are some people in the Hudson Valley who are not thinking so much Woodstock as just thinking about the Hudson Valley. They are thinking about communities who are not joined with other communities.
Yeah.
They're thinking of communities where there's a stretch out there between the towns.
Right.
Which is a hallmark of the Hudson Valley. And you're talking about streets and roads, you know,
Yeah.
with no traffic lights
Yeah.
and no stop signs.
Yeah.
I mean, somebody explained that to me when I first moved here. If you're going to live in the Hudson Valley, you've got to have, and it's like, way, you know. So we're looking at the, you know, 2029, 2026.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And if you go onto the Woodstock Town Board, Woodstock Democratic Committee, either one of those, you're in the thick of it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's going to be, it's a little overwhelming, like I said.
I think it's
definitely
wonderful that you've been here for 9 years.
Yeah, 10 years, open for 9. But
And you are, and I'm assuming that you work in the bar.
I do.
So you are really connected to your base.
Yeah, it's, you know, I hope so.
Yeah.
I mean, I meet wonderful, I really enjoy talking to people. And I enjoy talking to different people because I think it is one of the realest things in terms of expanding your consciousness and your understanding and your empathy and your compassion. I think there is a big contingent of society that kind of just surrounds itself with people that agree with them and have the same feelings and same experiences, and that's all well and good in small doses, but I think to really have an understanding of a community like Woodstock, you have to you kind of have to get in the trenches with it in a little ways, you know, and that's, you know, I've been trying to encourage people. I mean, I've just gotten a lot more free time, so I started volunteering much more often. But, you know, in volunteering in the past, you know, with either like the Christmas parade or the Halloween parade or, you know, stuff here in the studio or stuff at the community center, you really like get a better understanding of not only like the needs of the community, but of the individuals and the stories that they have. And
Absolutely.
You know, and I think that, you know, I mean, I've been trying to promote more people volunteering because it's like, you know, the food pantry everyone needs every single volunteering aspect, whether it be the Woodstock Land Conservancy or, you know, the food pantry or any number of them. They all need people. And I think there's this conception that to volunteer, you need to have a whole lot of time, or you need to have, you know, be financially well off so you're not missing work. But there's so many opportunities that take only a couple hours a week, and just I think once people kind of reacclimate with the idea of like what actual volunteerism looks like and the importance of that in terms of the community, they hopefully will get more involved. And I think that push is really starting to happen. I mean, I see it in terms of my immediate community and talking about the joys of what it means to help people and to do it in a really selfless way. Like everyone that I've experienced with, you know, with the food pantry or other things, they come off and they go, man, I feel really good. You know, it feels really good to make someone's day better and to do it from a completely altruistic way. You know, I think it's that kind of, that thinking really needs to be put out in a bigger way.
Well, and it brings people who are not together at all, it grounds them.
Right.
And I think that's very important because there's a lot of Woodstock right now that is not grounded.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of drifting going on.
And if you're only coming up here for the weekends, you're not grounded.
No, not at all. No, it becomes kind of like, you know, a postcard and something that you can look at, but you don't really ever have to touch. You know,
right?
And that's, you know, hey, I've been a weekender, and what was nice about moving up here is that I knew my dad was at the flea market every weekend. He had a circle of friends at the flea market, and he volunteered at the Phoenicia thrift store at the church, and he had like all these kind of like little connections and stories. And you don't think about it when you're coming up on the weekend how deep those connections are and how meaningful they are, especially when you go into very lonely winters. And you know, for him to be in his 70s at that point and have a circle of friends where he never, when we were coming up as kids in the weekend, it was you went grocery shopping, you went back to your house, maybe you went out to dinner or something like that. You didn't know anybody's names, you didn't wave to people in the street, and to, you know, be part of a community like it is such a joy. And granted, I have a very recognizable old car that I drive around, but to like drive down the street and have people wave and say, "What's up?" You know, like it's incredible. And that's, but that takes work and that takes involvement. That doesn't just come from buying a house and saying, yeah, oh well, this is my residence. I pay taxes in Woodstock, so I'm a Woodstocker.
Right.
You know.
Right.
So. Yeah.
And it doesn't, just having a membership at the library doesn't do it.
No.
I think there's 10,000 people have library cards or something crazy.
I know.
You know.
It's so funny.
But that doesn't mean.
Right.
It's very true. And when you participate in your community, you meet other people, which introduces you to other ideas.
Right.
And I am hopeful that more people will do that.
Yeah, me too. I think it's just, like I said, it's so enriching and it's so, I don't know, I think we hear a lot about this like epidemic of loneliness, that despite this very connected world we live in with all the social media and all these, you can text people out, there is an epidemic of loneliness, especially with elders, but you know, the youth feel it too. And when you realize that you're not alone and that there are people like you in your community, and even though you might have completely different backgrounds or socioeconomic stuff going on or any of that stuff, you can find strengths in those differences as a friend, as a, you know, a person. And just, you know, it's about putting the emphasis on it. You know, it's really, this is something that that strengthens everybody, not just you, and not just, you know, one group.
And boy, Woodstock is not one group. That's for,
No, it is
that's
not.
for sure.
It is not.
How do you see you fitting in with the Woodstock Democratic Committee and working through the coming year? Do you have any ideas?
You know, I really, so my top thing is really listening to kind of like I was on a debate team for a long time, and one of the most important things is like looking through and seeing the pros and cons of every argument and every side of everything. But I think ultimately having a sense of kindness, bringing a sense of kindness and humanity back to it, and not making it seem like it's all business, right? Like there's so much emphasis on things like tourism or, you know, supporting businesses. And I mean, a lot of the mom and pop businesses in town are not doing great. And they might not be as savvy as some of the bigger places that can do Instagram accounts and Facebook accounts and social media stuff. And like, I think that having this kind of understanding of wanting to protect the core values of Woodstock, wanting to protect the environment, but having the ability to like separate out people from their politics is really important. Like I hate to bring up the bar again, but it is incredible how people can, with the proper kind of like guidelines and framework and attitude, can actually collaborate, even though they have very, very different ideas. And that's my core thing. It's I don't think that anyone that thinks differently than me is bad or evil, or, you know, you can't argue with them, because it's not about arguing, it's about listening and finding commonality, right? So that would be I know that seems like a very pie in the sky idealistic way of thinking, but I don't think it's impossible. I think you just have to set that guideline and set that intention.
Uh-oh, we're down to 3 minutes. Listen, real quick, when is election day? How do they vote for you?
The Democratic primary is on June 24th. There are 2 spots available for town board and 1 spot available for supervisor. And then after that, the regular general election is, I want to say, November 2nd.
But now, where are you going? Where do you fit into that?
I'll be one of the Democratic candidates for town council.
Okay, what name is going to be on the ballot?
It'll be Lily Korolkoff. It's a very Russian last name, so you can't miss it. And we don't know what ballot positions will be yet, but yeah, there's only 3 of us, so you'll probably figure it out.
All right. Well, listen, is there something else that you'd like to say? Tell us the name of the bar also, for those who haven't done it.
It's Station Bar in Curio. It's at 101 Tinker Street. It's a very old train station that got moved to town in the 70s. I think it was 1970. But it's full of really good people and good times, and it's a beautiful spot.
And it has nice parking places, and there never was a train.
And there never was a train in Woodstock.
which is delightful.
Never was there tracks in Woodstock.
And I am hoping that once you get in office that you'll come back and we'll talk in about
absolutely.
Another 6 months and give it a go.
I would love that.
And thank you so much for coming, and thank you very much, Ellen.
Thank you, Ellen.
We really appreciate it.
Thank you.